Yoga. Practitioners of yoga aim for union with the self. Yoga is Sanskrit for union, by undertaking distinctive mental and physical exercises. Most of these exercises can be traced back to the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, which were written about 2,000 years ago. Patanjali's system, known as Raja Yoga, contains 8 distinctive levels and practices. 1. Yama, conduct of life in relation to others, avoiding untruth, theft, injury to others, sensuality, and greed. 2. Niyama, conduct towards oneself, cleanliness, tranquility, austerity, study, and devotion. 3. Asana, stretching, bending, balancing, and sitting exercises. These exercises are nowadays collectively known as Hatha Yoga. 4. Pranayama, breathing exercises which aim to control the mind. 5. Pratyahara, withdrawing the attention from the body and the senses. 6. Dharana, concentration of the mind. 7. Dhyana, meditation. 8. Samadhi, uninterrupted contemplation of reality. Most of these practices can be found in other spiritual systems. The only exceptions are Hatha Yoga and Pranayama, and it is these which give Raja Yoga its distinctive character. When visitors asked Sri Ramana about these practices, he would usually criticize Hatha Yoga because of its obsession with the body. It is a fundamental premise of his teachings that spiritual problems can only be solved by controlling the mind, and because of this he never encouraged the practice of spiritual disciplines which devoted themselves primarily to the well-being of the body. He had a higher opinion of pranayama, breath control, saying that it was a useful aid for those who could not otherwise control their mind, but on the whole he tended to regard it as a beginner's practice. His views on other aspects of Raja Yoga, such as morality, meditation, and samadhi, have been dealt with in separate chapters. In addition to Raja Yoga, there is another popular system called Kundalini Yoga. The practitioners of this system concentrate on psychic centers, chakras, in the body in order to generate a spiritual power they call Kundalini. The aim of this practice is to force the Kundalini up through a psychic channel, the Sushumna, which runs from the base of the spine to the brain. The Kundalini yogi believes that when this power reaches the Sahasrara, the highest chakra, located in the brain, self-realization will result. Sri Ramana never advised his devotees to practice Kundalini Yoga since he regarded it as being both potentially dangerous and unnecessary. He accepted the existence of the Kundalini power and the chakras, but he said that even if the Kundalini reached the Sahasrara, it would not result in realization. For final realization, he said, the Kundalini must go beyond the Sahasrara, down another nadi, psychic nerve, he called the Amrita Nadi, also called the Paranadi or Jivanadi, and into the heart center on the right-hand side of the chest. Since he maintained that self-inquiry would automatically send the Kundalini to the heart center, he taught that separate yoga exercises were unnecessary. The self is reached by the search for the origin of the ego and by diving into the heart. This is the direct method of self-realization. One who adopts it need not worry about the nadis, the brain center, Sahasrara, the Sushumna, the Paranadi, the Kundalini, Pranayama, or the 6 centers, chakras. In addition to the practices outlined above, Hinduism contains another yoga called Karma Yoga, the yoga of action. Practitioners of this system aim to evolve spiritually by selflessly serving and assisting others. Although it is spoken of highly in the Bhagavad Gita, Sri Ramana generally discouraged his devotees from following this path since it presupposes the existence of an I who is going to perform the good deeds and other people who are in need of assistance. He only encouraged it if he felt that particular devotees were incapable of following the paths of Jnana, Bhakti, or Raja Yoga. If an aspirant be unsuited temperamentally for the first two methods, jnana and bhakti, and circumstantially on account of age for the third method, yoga, he must try the karma marga, the path of karma yoga. His nobler instincts become more evident, and he derives impersonal pleasure. The man also becomes duly equipped for one of the three aforesaid paths. Sri Ramana stressed that to be successful, the karma yogi must be free of the notion that he, himself, is helping others, and that he must also be unattached and indifferent to the consequences of his actions. Although he rarely gave karma yoga more than a lukewarm endorsement, he did admit that both of these conditions would be met if all actions were performed without the I am the doer idea. Yoga means union. I wonder, union of what with what? Exactly. Yoga implies prior division, and it means later union of one thing with another. But who is to be united and with whom? You are the seeker, seeking union with something. If you assume this, then that something must be apart from you, but yourself is intimate to you, and you are always aware of it. Seek it, and be it. Then it will expand as the infinite, and there will be no question of yoga. Whose is the separation? Vayoga. I don't know. Is there really separation? Find out to whom is this Vayoga. That is yoga. Yoga is common to all paths. Yoga is really nothing but ceasing to think that you are different from the self or reality. All the yogas, kama, jnana, bhakti, raja, are just different paths to suit different natures with different modes of evolution. They are all aimed at getting people out of the long-cherished notion that they are different from the self. There is no question of union or yoga in the sense of going and joining something that is somewhere away from us or different from us, because you never were or could be separate from the self. What is the difference between yoga and inquiry? Yoga enjoins chitta-vritti nirodha, repression of thoughts, whereas I prescribed atmanvesana, quest of oneself. This latter method is more practicable. The mind is repressed in swoon or as the effect of fasting. But as soon as the cause is withdrawn, the mind revives. That is, the thoughts begin to flow as before. There are just two ways of controlling the mind. Either seek its source or surrender it to be struck down by the supreme power. Surrender is the recognition of the existence of a higher overruling power. If the mind refuses to help in seeking the source, then let it go and wait for its return. Then turn it inwards. No one succeeds without patient perseverance. Is it necessary to control one's breath? Breath control is only an aid for diving deep within oneself. One may as well dive down by controlling the mind. When the mind is controlled, the breath is controlled automatically. One need not attempt breath control. Mind control is enough. Breath control is only recommended for those who cannot control their minds straight away. When should one do pranayama, and why is it effective? In the absence of inquiry and devotion, the natural sedative pranayama, breath regulation, may be tried. This is known as yoga marga, the path of yoga. If life is imperiled, the whole interest centers round one point, the saving of life. If the breath is held, the mind cannot afford to and does not jump at its pets, external objects. Thus there is rest for the mind so long as the breath is held. All attention being turned on breath or its regulation, other interests are lost. The source of breath is the same as that of the mind. Therefore the subsidence of either leads effortlessly to the subsidence of the other. Will concentration on chakras quieten the mind? Fixing their minds on psychic centers such as the Sahasrara, the 1,000-petaled lotus chakra, yogis remain any length of time without awareness of their bodies. As long as this state continues, they appear to be immersed in some kind of joy. But when the mind which has become tranquil emerges and becomes active again, it resumes its worldly thoughts. It is therefore necessary to train it with the help of practices like dhyana, meditation, whenever it becomes externalized. It will then attain a state in which there is neither subsidence nor emergence. Is the mind control induced by pranayama also temporary? Quiescence lasts only so long as the breath is controlled, so it is transient. The goal is clearly not pranayama. It extends onto pratyahara, withdrawal, dharana, concentration of mind, dhyana, meditation, and samadhi. These stages deal with control of the mind. Such mind control becomes easier for a person who has earlier practiced pranayama. Pranayama therefore leads one to higher stages. Because these higher stages involve controlling the mind, one can say that mind control is the ultimate aim of yoga. A more advanced man will naturally go direct to the control of mind without wasting his time in practicing control of breath. Pranayama has 3 phases: exhalation, inhalation, and retention. How should they be regulated? Completely giving up identification with the body alone is exhalation, retaka. Merging within through the inquiry, who am I? Alone is inhalation, puraka. Abiding as the one reality, I am that. Alone is retention, kumbhaka. This is the real pranayama. I find it said in Maha Yoga that in the beginning of the meditation, one may attend to the breath, that is, its inspiration and expiration, and that after a certain amount of stillness of mind is attained, one can dive into the heart, seeking the source of the mind. I have been badly in want of some such practical hint. Can I follow this method? Is it correct? The thing is to kill the mind somehow. Those who have not the strength to follow the inquiry method are advised to adopt pranayama as a help to control the mind. This pranayama is of 2 kinds: controlling and regulating the breath, or simply watching the breath. For controlling the breath, is not the ratio 1:4:2 for inhaling, retaining the breath, and exhaling best? All those proportions sometimes regulated not by counting but by uttering mantras are aids to controlling the mind. That is all. Watching the breath is also one form of pranayama. Inhaling, retaining, and exhaling is more violent and may be harmful in some cases, for example when there is no proper guru to guide the seeker at every step and stage. But merely watching the breath is easy and involves no risk. Is the manifestation of Kundalini Sakti, Kundalini power, possible only for those who follow the yogic path of acquiring Sakti, power? Or is it possible also for those who follow the path of devotion, bhakti, or love, prema? Who does not have Kundalini Sakti? When the real nature of that Sakti is known, it is called Akandakara Vitri, unbroken consciousness, or Aham Spurana, effulgence of I. Kundalini Sakti is there for all people whatever path they follow. It is only a difference in name. It is said that the Sakti manifests itself in 5 phases, 10 phases, 100 phases, and 1,000 phases. Which is true, 5 or 10 or 100 or 1,000? Sakti has only one phase. If it is said to manifest itself in several phases, it is only a way of speaking. The Sakti is only one. Can a jnani help not only those who follow his path, but also others who follow other paths, such as yoga? Undoubtedly, he can help people whatever path they choose to follow. It is something like this. Suppose there is a hill, there will be very many paths to climb it. If he were to ask people to climb by the way he came, some may like it and some may not. If people who do not like it are asked to climb by that path, and by that path only, they will not be able to come up. Hence a yoni helps people following any particular path, whatever it may be. People who are midway may not know about the merits and demerits of other paths, but one who has climbed to the summit and sits there observing others coming up is able to see all the paths. He will therefore be able to tell people who are coming up to move a little to this side or that, or to avoid a pitfall. The goal is the same for all. How can one direct the prana or life force into the Sushumna nadi, a psychic nerve in the spine, so that the Chit Jata Granthi, the identification of consciousness with the body, can be severed in the manner stated in Sri Ramana Gita? By inquiring, "Who am I?" The yogi may be definitely aiming at rousing the kundalini and sending it up the Sushumna. The yoni may not be having this as his object, but both achieve the same results, that of sending the life force up the Sushumna and severing the Chit Jata Granthi. Kundalini is only another name for Atma, or self, or Sakti. We talk of it as being inside the body because we conceive ourselves as limited by this body, but it is in reality both inside and outside, being not different from the self or the Sakti of self. How to turn up the nadis, psychic nerves, so that the kundalini may go up the Sushumna? Though the yogi may have his methods of breath control for this object, the yoni's method is only that of enquiry. When by this method the mind is merged in the self, the Sakti or Kundalini, which is not apart from the self, rises automatically. The yogis attach the highest importance to sending the Kundalini to the Sahasrara, the brain center, or the 1,000-petaled lotus. They point out the scriptural statement that the life current enters the body through the fontanelle, and argue that viyoga, separation, having come about that way, yoga union must also be effected in the reverse way. Therefore they say we must by yoga practice gather up the pranas and enter the fontanelle for the consummation of yoga. The yonis, on the other hand, point out that the yogi assumes the existence of the body and its separateness from the self. Only if this standpoint of separateness is adopted can the yogi advise effort for reunion by the practice of yoga. In fact, the body is in the mind, which has the brain for its seat. That the brain functions by light borrowed from another source is admitted by the yogis themselves in their fontanella theory. The yoni further argues, if the light is borrowed, it must come from its native source. Go to the source direct, and do not depend on borrowed resources. That source is the heart, the self. The self does not come from anywhere else and enter the body through the crown of the head. It is as it is, ever sparkling, ever steady, unmoving, and unchanging. The individual confines himself to the limits of the changeful body or of the mind which derives its existence from the unchanging self. All that is necessary is to give up this mistaken identity, and that done, the ever-shining self will be seen to be the single non-dual reality. If one concentrates on the Sahasrara, there is no doubt that the ecstasy of samadhi ensues. The vasanas, that is, the latent mental tendencies, are not, however, destroyed. The yogi is therefore bound to wake up from the samadhi because release from bondage has not yet been accomplished. He must still try to eradicate the vasanas inherent in him so that they cease to disturb the peace of his samadhi. So he passes down from the Sahasrara to the heart through what is called the Jivanadi, which is only a continuation of the Sushumna. The Sushumna is thus a curve. It starts from the lowest chakra, rises through the spinal cord to the brain, and from there bends down and ends in the heart. When the yogi has reached the heart, the samadhi becomes permanent. Thus we see that the heart is the final center. Hatha yogi practices are said to banish diseases effectively and are therefore advocated as necessary preliminaries to jnana yoga. Let those who advocate them use them. It has not been the experience here. All diseases will be effectively annihilated by continuous self-inquiry. If you proceed on the notion that health of body is necessary for health of mind, there will never be an end to the care of the body. Is not Hatha Yoga necessary for the inquiry into the self? Each one finds some one method suitable to himself because of the latent tendencies, purva samskara. Can Hatha Yoga be accomplished at my age? Why do you think of all that? Because you think the self is exterior to yourself, you desire it and try for it. But do you not exist all along? Why do you leave yourself and go after something external? It is said in the Aparoksha on the Buddhi that Hatha Yoga is a necessary aid for inquiry into the self. The Hatha Yogis claim to keep the body fit so that the inquiry may be effected without obstacles. They also say that life must be prolonged so that the inquiry may be carried to a successful end. Furthermore, there are those who use some medicines, kayakalpa, with that end in view. Their favorite example is that the screen must be perfect before the painting has begun. Yes, but which is the screen, and which is the painting? According to them, the body is the screen, and the inquiry into the self is the painting. But is not the body itself a picture on the screen, the self? But Hatha Yoga is so much spoken of as an aid. Yes, even great pandits well versed in the Vedanta continue the practice of it. Otherwise their minds will not subside. So you may say it is useful for those who cannot otherwise still the mind. What are asanas, postures, or seats? Are they necessary? Many asanas with their effects are mentioned in the Yoga Sastras. The seats are the tiger skin, grass, etc. The postures are the lotus posture, the easy posture, and so on. Why all these? Only to know oneself. The truth is that from the self the ego rises up, confuses itself with the body, mistakes the world to be real, and then, covered with egotistic conceit, it thinks wildly and looks for asanas, seats. Such a person does not understand that he himself is the center of all and thus forms the basis for all. The asana, seat, is meant to make him sit firm. Where and how can he remain firm except in his own real state? This is the real asana. Attaining the steadiness of not swerving from the knowledge that the base asana upon which the whole universe rests is only self, which is the space of true knowledge. The illustrious ground alone is the firm and motionless posture asana for excellent samadhi. In what asana is Bhagavan usually seated? In what asana? In the asana of the heart. Wherever it is pleasant, there is my asana. That is called Sukhasana, the asana of happiness. That asana of the heart is peaceful and gives happiness. There is no need for any other asana for those who are seated in that one. The Gita seems to emphasize karma yoga, for Arjuna is persuaded to fight. Sri Krishna himself set the example by an active life of great exploits. The Gita starts by saying that you are not the body and that you are not therefore the karta, the doer. What is the significance? It means that one should act without thinking that oneself is the actor. Actions will go on even in the egoless state. Each person has come into manifestation for a certain purpose, and that purpose will be accomplished whether he considers himself to be the actor or not. What is karma yoga? Is it non-attachment to karma, action, or its fruit? Karma yoga is that yoga in which the person does not arrogate to himself the function of being the actor. all actions go on automatically. Is it non-attachment to the fruits of actions? The question arises only if there is an actor. It is said in all the scriptures that you should not consider yourself to be the actor. So karma yoga is katritva buddhi rahita karma, action without the sense of doership. Yes, quite so. The Gita teaches that one should have an active life from beginning to end. Yes, the actorless action. If one remains quiet, how is action to go on? Where is the place for karma yoga? Let us first understand what karma is, whose karma is it, and who is the doer. Analyzing them and inquiring into their truth, one is obliged to remain as the self in peace. Nevertheless, even in that state, the actions will go on. How will the actions go on if I do not act? Who asked this question? Is it the self or another? Is the self concerned with actions? No, not the self. It is another, different from the self. So it is plain that the self is not concerned with actions, and so the question does not arise. I want to do karma yoga. How can I help others? Who is there for you to help? Who is the I that is going to help others? First, clear up that point, and then everything will settle itself. That means realize the self. Does my realization help others? Yes, and it is the best help that you can possibly render to others. But really there are no others to be helped, for the realized being sees only the self, just as the goldsmith sees only the gold while valuing it in various jewels made of gold. When you identify yourself with the body, name and form are there. But when you transcend the body consciousness, the others also disappear. The realized one does not see the world as different from himself. Would it not be better if saints mixed with other people in order to help them? There are no others to mix with. The self is the only reality. The sage helps the world merely by being the real self. The best way for one to serve the world is to win the egoless state. If you are anxious to help the world, but think that you cannot do so by attaining the egoless state, then surrender to God all the world's problems along with your own. Should I not try to help the suffering world? The power that created you has created the world as well. If it can take care of you, it can similarly take care of the world also. If God has created the world, it is His business to look after it, not yours. Is the desire for Swaraj, political independence, right? Such desire, no doubt, begins with self-interest. Yet practical work for the goal gradually widens the outlook so that the individual becomes merged in the country. Such merging of the individuality is desirable, and the related karma is niskama, unselfishness. If Swaraj is gained after a long struggle and terrible sacrifices, is not the person justified in being pleased with the result and elated by it? He must have, in the course of his work, surrendered himself to the higher power whose might must be kept in mind and never lost sight of. How then can he be elated? He should not even care for the result of his actions. Then alone the karma becomes unselfish.